Welcome all. Good morning. Please join me in singing hymn number 1007 in the blue hymnal. Rise in body or spirit, and join me in 1007. There's a river flowing in my soul.
Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ann Arbor. My name is Heather Vickery, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I am the coordinator for congregational activism at your Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. And I am so grateful to have been invited to share the message today and to have worked with all these lovely people on both of these worships. I'm going to invite those online who are newcomers or regular visitors to introduce themselves in the chat. And if you're a newcomer, fill out a survey so the congregation can better connect with you at UUAA.org/newcomer survey. Those of you in person and are new, please know that there is a newcomer welcome in the Redmond room just outside the sanctuary doors to the left. And there will be someone there to help answer questions and orient you to the congregation. After the service, please join us in the social hall to learn more about all the various activities that are happening at UUAA and to talk to myself and one of the main organizers of our partner organization, the work that we're talking about today in the service. I'd also just like to start our time off with something that my congregation often says, which is, I'm not perfect. I don't expect you to be. We strive for authenticity and connection, not perfection. And when we are not perfect together, that is when we are truly worshipful. So let's worship together.
Now is the time in our service when we gather all of our separate energies and actions into one body, one flame, and one voice. For those of you joining us online or at a later time, I'd like to invite you to gather your chalice now as we prepare to light it here in Ann Arbor. This morning, I'd like to invite Jackson and Lucy to light the chalice with us this morning. The flaming chalice, the enduring symbol of our Unitarian Universalism, is a beacon of light and understanding, of radiant love, and a spark towards the energy of action. We know that the work we do to support the inherent worth and dignity of each person is of paramount importance, now as it ever has been. The assaults against the dignity of trans and non-binary people here and abroad are a terrifying call to action. We need to renew our pledge to make holy trouble for any of those powers that work to deny our trans beloveds their full humanity. Will you please join me as we say the words of our chalice lighting? We light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. We light this chalice for the harmony of peace. Thank you, Jackson and Lucy, for sparking this flame. Each week, when we meet here in this sacred space, we bring the entirety of our experiences with us. Every broken promise, every wounded heart, every weary moment we've endured is carried into this space. And each week, we covenant with each other to begin again in love, to renew our pledge of commitment to ourselves, each other, and the world beyond our sanctuary. Perhaps most importantly, we covenant to help one another. I remember Mr. Rogers, one of my heroes, whose mother told him to always look for the helpers when something scary was happening. Can we be those helpers? Especially in this world that is so scary for so many, including trans and non-binary people. I believe we can be those helpers. Will you please join me in speaking the words of our covenant, surrounded by helpers, held up by love? The spirit of this church is love, and service is its law. This is our covenant with each other, to dwell together in peace, to search for truth in love, and to help one another.
When I was a kid, I used fantasy to escape from the reality of the world around me as a Jewish yet at the time unknown trans person. My mother encouraged me to explore my creativity. One day I would pretend to be famous like Michael Jackson or Madonna. Another day I was someone completely made up, like Peter Pan or Captain Hook. For some of us, fantasy is safer than reality, and it gives us the freedom to be anything and everything we want to be. Our story for all ages this morning, from the stars in the sky to the fish in the sea, written by Cheng, Thom, illustrated by Woyaya Lee and Cheng. Once upon a time, in a little blue house on a hill on the edge of the town, a baby was born. They were born when both the moon and the sun were in the sky, so the baby couldn't decide what to be. Boy or girl, bird or fish, cat or rabbit, tree or star. So the baby looked a little like everything. They looked very strange. All the same, the baby's mother gave her child a bath and rocked them in her arms. Your name, she said, is Mulan. And she sang a song that her own mother had sung to her long ago. Whatever you dream of, I believe you can be. From the stars in the sky to the fish in the sea, you can crawl like a crab, but with feathers fly high. And I'll always be here, I'll be near standing by. And you know that I'll love you till the day that I die. And even though they still couldn't decide, the baby felt loved. Mulan grew up to be a strange, magical child who was always changing. They grew feathers and wings to fly with bluebirds in the mornings, scales and a tail to swim with fish in the afternoons, and fur and paws to play with puppies in the evenings. No matter how many things Mulan became, their mother always brought them back into the little blue house, gave them a bath, tucked them in at the day's end, and as the stars rose, she sang, "Whatever you dream of, I believe you can be. From the stars in the sky to the fish in the sea." And Mulan felt loved. One day, it was time for the child to go to school. They were so excited, they grew a tail of peacock feathers and a coat of tiger stripes. "Have fun," said Mulan's mother. But when they got to school, the other children were either boys or girls. They had no feathers, no leaves, no fur, no fins, not even any sparkles. No one invited Mulan to play. One little boy ran up to the child and asked, "What are you supposed to be?" Mulan didn't know how to answer. When they came home, their mother asked them how they liked school. "It's okay," said Mulan. "Did you make any friends?" "Not really," said Mulan. That night, Mulan's mother tucked them into bed and sang, "You can crawl like a crab or with feathers fly high, and I'll always be here, I'll be near by your side, and you know that I'll love you till the day that I die." And Mulan felt loved, but they also worried. The next day, they wore a turtle shell and porcupine spines. No one pulled or poked Mulan, but the other children still pointed and whispered. "Did you make any friends today?" asked their mother. "Not really," said Mulan. That night, Mulan's mother tucked them into bed and sang, "Whatever you dream of, I believe you can be. From the stars in the sky to the fish in the sea." And Mulan felt loved, but they also felt sad. The next day, Mulan wore no feathers, no scales, no leaves, no fur, no shells, no spine, not even any sparkles. Mulan was invited to play baseball with the boys. No one pointed, whispered, laughed, or stared. But when Mulan joined the little girls playing hopscotch, "Boys don't play hopscotch," said a little girl. Are you a boy or a girl anyway? Asked a little boy. Didn't you have a shell the other day? Asked the little girl. And feathers the day before? What are you supposed to be? Said several children all at once. I don't know! Mulan shouted, and galloped off the playground on horse's hooves, and swam through the stream with fish's tail, and soared on the hill on an eagle's wings. How was school? Asked Mulan's mother. I wore feathers and stripes so that the other kids would think I was beautiful, but they thought I was weird. And then I wore a shell and spines so that no one would pull or poke me, but they wouldn't talk to me. And then I tried to be just like everyone else, but I haven't made any friends. I can't decide what to be. Why do I have to be just one thing? It isn't always easy to be different from everyone else, said their mother. But you can only be who you are. What if the other children don't like who I am? Sniffled Mulan. Their mother smiled sadly. I don't know, she admitted, but I do know this. Whatever you dream of, I believe you can be. From the stars in the sky to the fish in the sea. That night, they slept a deep sleep. The next day, Mulan wore fur, feathers, scales, leaves, and many sparkles that glittered like stars. For a moment, none of the other children spoke. Then, a little girl said, "You can fly? That's so cool!" "I like your sparkles," said a little boy. "I'm sorry I pulled your feathers," said the boy with red hair. "I was a little jealous of them." Mulan asked, "Does anyone want to play with me?" They showed the other children how to gallop like fish, gallop like horses, climb like monkeys, and swim like fish. It was fun to be so many different things. And the child of fur, feathers, scales, leaves, and sparkles, who was neither boy nor girl, but many things, and always changing, felt happy. In the little blue house on the hill on the edge of town, Mulan's mother smiled and sang the song her mother had sung to her once upon a time. Whatever you dream of, I believe you can be. From the stars in the sky to the fish in the sea. You can crawl like a crab with feathers fly high. And I'll always be here. I'll be near standing by. And you know that I'll love you till the day that I die. Whatever you dream of, I believe you can be. For you are my child, courageous and free. The end. this time in our service, when our children depart for their classes, I invite all you young people to follow your teachers out of the sanctuary as the congregation sings with love.
Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine.
As we turn to our weekly offering, I invite you to consider our congregation's commitment to radical welcome, one of our 3 2050 vision priority areas. Radical welcome, in my understanding, involves embracing folks across their unique and intersectional identities. Not only that, radical welcome requires that we learn from, grow alongside, and open up to being shaped and changed by each other. In a similar vein, celebrating Trans Day of Visibility asks not only that we celebrate the lives and contributions of trans people, but that we acknowledge and bear witness to the poverty, discrimination, and violence the trans community faces. Applying radical welcome principles to Trans Day of Visibility means actively welcoming and making space for trans and non-binary congregants, working to hear and sit with our lived experiences, allowing this congregation to be changed by what we share and who we are, and being accomplices in systemic change so we can experience true equity. As a trans and non-binary person, I am thankful every day for the ways in which this community has lived into the principles of radical welcome and how this practice benefits not only trans folks, but all of us. And yet, there is still work to be done. This morning's offering will go to the programs and ministries of this congregation, including our continued work towards radical welcome, anti-racism and anti-oppression, climate action, and justice. I invite you to join me in supporting UUAA community in one of several ways. If you're here in person, you can drop cash or check into the baskets as they are passed. If you're interested in a more digital experience, you can text UUAA to 73256. Again, that's 73256. Or visit us online at uuaa.org/giving and select weekly offering. In whatever manner you decide to give, I thank you for your financial generosity and your commitment to making this congregation in Washtenaw County a better place for all. I would now like to invite our ushers forward as we gratefully receive today's offering. I now invite you to rise in body or spirit as the ushers come forward and we dedicate our offering. Please join with me in saying, "To the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings." Thank you. You may be seated.
Today's reading is the Troublemaker Blessing by Lóre Stevens and Cody Hooks. We are the holy troublemakers, the mystics and misfits, the doubters and devil worshippers, the Afrofuturists and magical realists, the so-called heretics, heathens, and hedonists. Hell, even the kinks and Trekkies fit under this sparkly umbrella. No category can contain us. We're basically everything else. We are the pesky shadow sewn to the feet of all great traditions, teachings, and institutions. We embody the eternal unknown, the stubborn mysteries, the uncontrollable forces of nature. We are human prisms, breaking plain white light into a riot of color. The monsters under the bed who remind you that there's as much to be learned from the sacred darkness as there is the light. We are the mischievous seekers who demand to know why, how come, and what's the point. Our only doctrine is that no truth is the whole truth. No way is the one right way. We celebrate the queers, the forbidden lovers, the shapeshifters, the box breakers. Thank you for creating the unimaginable just by being your outrageous selves. We celebrate the pagans, the witches, folk healers, midwives, and death doulas, those whose allegiance is first and foremost to this dirty, bloody, beautiful planet Earth. Thank you for keeping humanity's feet on the ground and our eyes on the stars. We celebrate the atheists, agnostics, and non-believers. Thank you for laughing at the powerful and for doubting absolutely everything with such gleeful fierceness. We invite all to plant the ancient seeds of questions. May they bloom into fabulous futures. Bless this world with your unique imperfections, your change, your holy failure, your sacred resurrections. May you wake every morning with stardust in your eyes. O little universe, may you love forever.
For our meditation today, as we're discussing something that can be difficult, I want to call us into our bodies, our holy bodies, whatever they look like, wherever they may be in the world, however they feel today, and ask us to take some deep collective breaths together, knowing that as we breathe in the breath and the air around that connects all of us. And as we breathe out, we join our breath together in community. And let us breathe in silence. Friends, I am so grateful to be here with you all on this Sunday as we celebrate the Trans Day of Visibility a bit early. As an aspirant for UU ministry and in my role as coordinator for congregational activism at UUSC, I get to preach in a lot of different UU congregations. And let me tell you, each congregation does things a little bit differently, which makes sense. I mean, we UUs are kind of known for loving to argue and disagree about practically anything. There are even some UU jokes about it, and some of my favorites are: a Unitarian Universalist died, and to his surprise discovered that there was indeed an afterlife. The angel in charge of these things told him, "Because you are an unbeliever and a doubter and a skeptic, you will be sent to hell for all eternity," which in your case consists of a place where no one will disagree with you ever again. Second one, visitors on a tour of heaven noticed a group of Unitarian Universalists who were arguing about whether or not they were really there. The final one I'll share today, a visitor to a Unitarian Universalist church sat through the sermon with growing incredulity at the heretical ideas being spouted. After the sermon, a UU asked the visitor, "So how did you like it?" "I can't believe half the things that minister said," sputtered the visitor in outrage. "Oh, good, then you'll fit right in." So honestly, I love pretty much all UU jokes, but especially the ones about how much we love to argue and disagree about things. We have 8 principles and an infinite number of ways to interpret them. We agree on a lot, but love to get into the nitty-gritty about what we aren't so sure of. And I think we can all agree as a faith, we actually like being unsure. We lean into it, and that's a beautiful thing. We understand that we're a learning and not a learned faith, and that healthy disagreement produces growth and keeps us from being dogmatic about things that we, and in fact no one, can know for sure. However, there's one thing that solidly connects all UUs. In every single congregation, there is a chalice, and that chalice is lit to begin worship. Now you might be thinking, I thought this worship was going to be about how our faith calls us to support our trans beloveds in these times of fascist threats against their humanity. The chalice and UU jokes don't have anything to do with that. Well, first, to come full circle, I disagree. And second, I promise I will explain more, and maybe something that never happens in a UU service will happen today. You all will end up agreeing with me. It is the chalice itself, the very thing that binds all UUs together, that most strongly calls us to the work of resisting the criminalization of our trans and gender expansive beloveds. You see, our chalice, as sacred as it is to us today, wasn't always the symbol of the Unitarian and Universalist faiths. In 1940, Reverend Dr. Charles Ryan Joy was sent by the newly created Unitarian Service Committee, the predecessor to the current UUSC, to Lisbon, Portugal, which was the only open port in Europe at the time and was where many of the refugees were fleeing the Nazi regime. Many of those refugees had to flee without any kind of identification papers that were required to cross borders. So Joy decided to start making identification papers issued by the USC itself. This was uncharted waters. But instead of focusing on the risks that he and the organization might be taking by doing this, Joy focused on saving the lives of those fleeing fascism. He also decided that these papers needed a seal to look as official as other travel papers. And so he asked Hans Deutsch, an Austrian refugee and artist working in Lisbon, to create one. And the result was the basis of the Flaming Chalice, as we now know it. While this was happening, by the way, Waitzel and Martha Sharp were also sent to Europe by the USC. They not only falsified documents to get people out, but also laundered money if necessary. So you see, the thing that binds us all as Unitarian Universalists together, the Chalice, was founded on our commitment to human rights and to fighting fascism. Since the founding of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, we have been committed to supporting the work of liberation, even when, and maybe especially when, it involves making holy trouble for the powers that would deny anyone's full humanity. Okay, now let's take a nice deep breath together. I'm going to keep calling you back to breathe. Please breathe in between when I don't tell you as well. Now, this is where we get into the heavy stuff. I want to invite you during this time to do whatever you need to do to care for yourselves and stay grounded as we proceed. If you need to stand up and stretch, walk to the back of the sanctuary, look at your phones, yes, even that. Please listen to your body's needs and follow them. I promise I won't be insulted. Talking about the present nature of fascism in our country can be incredibly triggering for anyone. To my trans and queer family in the room, this invitation goes out to you especially. To understand what fascism is, I want to reference the work of Jason Stanley, who's the author of How Fascism Works, The Politics of Us and Them. Stanley is a professor and scholar of philosophy and propaganda at Yale, and he describes fascism as an ideology, but also, and perhaps more importantly, as a political method. Not all who use fascist tactics are ideologically fascist. We recognize fascists less by their beliefs than by their methods. So I'm going to share Stanley's overview of the 10 tactics of political fascism. What I'm sharing with you now is taken directly from Stanley's work, at times word for word, from a video lecture he gave titled The 10 Tactics of Fascism, which is available on YouTube. I recommend watching the video even more than once and sending it to others who need to know this. Stanley opens by explaining that these 10 tactics are bundled, that they can't be isolated from each other. The first tactic is building a mythic past. Fascists always present the idea that there was once a glorious past. In politics, this is presented in the idea that we were once a great nation. Notice the past tense. And when we were great, the dominant group ruled over the others. But now, that's been taken away. Not lost by our own actions, but taken away by some group designated as other. Jason Stanley says fascists are always telling a story about a glorious past that's been lost, and they tap into this nostalgia. So when you fight back against fascism, you've got one hand tied behind your back, because the truth is messy and complex, and the mythical story is always clear and compelling and entertaining. It's hard to undercut with facts. The second tactic is propaganda. All social movements and all politics use propaganda to persuade. Fascist propaganda, however, makes a distinction between friends and enemies. It casts the other as a threat and presents the idea that these others are fundamentally opposed to the nation. Tactic 3 is anti-intellectualism. Authoritarianism presents a cult of the leader. In a fascist system, the leader and only the leader sets the rules about what is true or false. So we see the takeover of the country's media, schools, and cultural institutions to enforce what the leader says is true. Institutions that teach multiple perspectives on history always threaten the leader. Expertise threatens the leader. Science is a threat to the leader. If intellectuals are telling the truth, they are a threat. So anti-racism, critical race theory, definitely a threat. And this brings us to tactic number 4, the creation of a form of unreality. The scholar Timothy Snyder talks about this a lot, the destruction of notions of reality. Authoritarians undermine what we know to be true and convince the population that A, everyone is lying, and B, that the lies don't matter. In political terms, the center of democracy is truth. You can't function as a democratic citizen if you're being lied to. The fifth tactic of fascism is hierarchy. Hierarchy is absolutely central to fascism. It is the big lie at the center of things. White supremacy, male supremacy, able-bodied supremacy. These lies assign people superiority and the privileges and benefits that go with that superiority. And hierarchy goes right into victimhood. Once you've convinced people that they are justifiably higher in the hierarchy, then you can convince them that they are the victims of equality. Fascists tell people that equality is victimizing them by making them lose their rightful place of power. Stanley says the goal is to make people feel like victims, to make them feel like they've lost something, and that the thing they've lost has been taken from them by a specific enemy, usually some minority outgroup or some opposing nation. The seventh tactic of fascism is law and order. Under fascism, the definition of law-abiding means loyalty to the dominant group. Members of the dominant group, by their very nature, are considered law-abiding. Marginalized groups are seen by their very nature as not being law-abiding. And law and order has nothing to do with justice and equality. Law and order structures who is legitimate and who is not. And law and order will ultimately be enforced by violence. Tactic 8 is sexual anxiety. In every case across different cultural and historical settings, the fascist leader will always say, your women and children are under threat. You need a strong man to protect your families. Fascists make conservatives overwhelmingly terrified of transgender rights and gay, lesbian, and bisexual people and their families. According to fascists, these targeted groups are not simply trying to peacefully live their own lives, they're trying to destroy the majority's life, and they're coming for the majority's children. Stanley calls the ninth tactic of fascism Sodom and Gomorrah. Fascist movements typically rest on an urban-rural divide, and fascists use the toxic trope of the biblical story of Sodom and Gomorrah. In this trope, pure, hard-working, real members of the nation live in rural areas where they work hard with their hands. But when politicians talk about inner-city voters or urban voters, we all know what they mean. Black and queer folks, immigrants, Jews, and other people that fascists seek to control or eliminate. The 10th and final tactic is what Stanley, a child of Holocaust survivors, calls Arbeit macht frei. Work shall make you free. Those words were hung over the gate at Auschwitz. Fascists create an idea that minorities, immigrants, and others are lazy, that these groups need to be taught a work ethic. The mechanism they use is forced labor. Whether it's prison labor or work requirements for benefits, the targeted groups must provide free labor as a supposed moral education. According to fascists, labor unions are supposedly run by communists who are trying to make things easier for these lazy people. College students who protest conservative speakers are described as lazy, spoiled kids who need to get real jobs. And the thing is, the end game of this calculation is pure evil. Valuing people by how hard they work means that the elderly, disabled, and even children are disposable. The Nazis murdered these groups first because they believed that those who could not work had no value. Is it any wonder that we're now seeing the repeal of child labor laws in our own country in these times of rising fascism? Those are Stanley's 10 tactics of fascism. Very long quote over. Friends, I invite you to take another deep breath. Because no doubt you recognized many, if not all, of these tactics at work today in the United States and around the world. Currently in the US, anti-LGBTQ rhetoric and legislation seems to be one of the few issues that brings disparate factions of conservatives together, and right-wing politicians are leaning in hard. 38 states currently have anti-transgender legislation on their books, with the number of new bills growing by the day. The ACLU is currently tracking over 278 anti-LGBTQI bills that are in process for this 2024 legislative session in various states, most of them anti-trans laws. And there are also 38 national bills being proposed. These bills threaten our trans and gender-expansive beloveds in many ways, some of which that are really important to keep in mind are the next three. Transgenocide through legal definitions, which seek to erase trans folks from public life and to remove any protections they may have. Second common one, expansion of anti-LGBTQI propaganda laws, which apply to libraries, schools, and the internet. And third, child custody and removal laws that would allow the state or other family members to take children from trans parents or from parents who are honoring their child's gender identity. The lies and misinformation surrounding these bills are abhorrent. These bills are trying to legislate trans and queer people out of existence. And please know that this is not hyperbole. We know that this is the ultimate goal as well because of Project 2025, which is the right's published plan to reshape the executive branch if they win the next presidential election. If you'd like to have nightmares for a few nights in a row, read it. One of their first acts would be to institute a nationwide "Don't Say Gay" policy through executive order. Because of these laws, trans people in the United States now meet the definition of internally displaced people by the United Nations. Hundreds of thousands of trans people and their families have already fled their homes to safer states, with more than 1 million considering doing so. So let's take another breath. There are so many questions we can ask ourselves in light of the current situation. What do we do? Who do we want to be? How do we resist and find joy even in times like these? And I think many of us have looked back at times like the Holocaust and have thought, if I was there, I would have done something. Well, folks, we're there. What is the something we're going to do? What is the something that you are going to do? Earlier this year, an organization, or last year, I gotta update that. Last year, an organization led by trans activists approached UUSC and asked if we could support their work in helping trans folks relocate to safer states. They saw the work UUSC is doing with congregations and supporting asylum seekers and wondered if UUs had the networks, infrastructure, and desire to support a different kind of asylum seeker, ones driven from their US-based homes and communities. In this work being led by trans activists, we are in an interfaith coalition with Quakers, Jews, Mennonites, the United Church of Christ, and more. We're exploring partnerships with mutual aid networks and anyone else who is saying, no, I won't let this happen, not on my watch. We are working together to create networks of safety and direct support for trans beloveds and their families who need to relocate, access health care across state lines, or stay as safe as possible where they are. Because of the safety concerns for these trans organizers and the people they are serving, we are prioritizing their security above all else, which is allowing us to move in deep trust during these crucial, frightening times. This is why I'm not sharing the name of the organization that is leading us or any other details during this sermon. Instead, we have come up with the stage name Pink Haven Coalition to talk about this work. But please know, it has directly impacted people who are directing us and leading us in this work, as it always should be. Acting in coalition together for trans liberation is a direct antidote to the rising fascism we see not only in the United States, but throughout the world right now. Whenever we resist fascism and injustice, we weaken them everywhere. So as we honor the Trans Day of Visibility today, and maybe soon the Trans Visibility Month, know that as you support our trans and gender expansive beloveds to not just survive but thrive, you're also supporting all others that are targeted by fascism, and you're helping to heal the world from the sin of dehumanization and oppression. And here are 3 important ways that you all can get involved in this critical life-saving work. First, you can volunteer. We are looking for people to be part of villages of support in welcoming states such as your own. We need hosts to offer space in their homes, and we need volunteers to provide support in navigating government programs, accessing health care, finding employment, and establishing social connections. By joining forces, we can provide a safer exodus and a welcoming community for those settling in our area. The second way you can help is to make a gift. These efforts to support our trans beloveds require financial resources. Your contributions will help us address the practical needs of those seeking sanctuary, respond to their immediate needs, and set them up for success in their new lives. The First Parish in Malden, Massachusetts has generously offered to act as fiscal sponsor for this work. Please know that all donations in their entirety are moving directly into the hands of trans-led organizers and being used to support trans and non-binary people in accessing the resources and support they need to survive and thrive. If you can, I encourage you to give as abundantly and courageously as you are able by visiting www.pinkhaven.org and clicking donate. The third way you can support is to skill up. We are all in different places in our justice journeys. Some of us here are trans or gender expansive, and this is your lived reality. Others of us may be new to the wonderful world that awaits beyond the gender binary. For those of us who may not fully understand all the terms and complexities of gender and maybe worry about not knowing what to say or saying the wrong thing, I urge you to lean into your discomfort and the holy imperfection and support these individuals and families anyway. Explore resources that increase your competency in this arena. Reach out to me if you need some ideas. Pretty much nothing would make me happier. Holly has also volunteered to be a resource for folks. Join me and one of the organizers of our Frontline partner during coffee hour to chat about this work. Learn more, ask questions, build relationship with us. Let us compliment your sparkly hat, whatever it is. Friends, the forces of fascism in our nation and in others around the world are only going to grow more brazen in their quest for power. It's up to us to pay attention, disrupt the violence, and remain true to who we are as justice-loving people of faith. As the late John Lewis advised, do not get lost in a sea of despair. Do not become bitter or hostile. Be hopeful. Be optimistic. Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. We will find a way to make a way out of no way. So I am calling all you holy troublemakers to join us, to rise up and say, we will not fall in line. We will not let this happen. We will make so much holy, troublesome noise that we will drown out the sounds of hate and fear and fascism. Together, we can and will find a way out of no way. Now is the time. We are the ones we have been waiting for. Amen, Ashe, and may it be so.
Our final hymn of the day, number 1020 in the teal hymnal, Woyaya, number 1020.
For our benediction, I want to start with a paraphrasing of the fabulous, amazing Billy Porter when he says this is a backlash to a change that has already happened. Holy troublemakers, our call is to resist the backslide and to keep moving forward together. As our worship ends and our service begins, may we remember to breathe in, breathe out, and to make our way through no way. Amen.